and at home. This is the second of our hybrid meetings, so you can choose where you come to, and I'm trying to host both at the same time, which is interesting. But we shall start now and welcome Rachel McGuinn, speech therapist, and who's going to give us a talk. And over to you, Rachel.
Thanks, Rose. Can everyone see me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Great. Well, thank you for having me today, and for inviting me along. I have a presentation, so I will try and share my screen so that you can see that. But just first of all, just to introduce myself, my name is Rachel and I'm a speech therapist from the West-Herts community adult speech and language therapy team. We are part of Central London Community Healthcare Trust, but covering West Hertfordshire. Our team is split into sort of 4 localities, which are St Albans, Hemel Hempstead, Watford and Potters Bar. And we have therapists sort of based in each of those 4 localities. But over the past 18 months, because we've been working virtually quite a lot of the time, we've been sort of all covering all areas. So I think there are a few familiar faces today who I recognise, but also just to say, because we're a community speech therapy team, we cover kind of a broad range of client groups. We work a lot with people who've had a stroke, with progressive neurological disorders, voice problems, stammering, dementia, amongst other things. Right, I'm going to try and share my screen. So, could the hosts enable screen sharing, please?
That's Aubrey.
How do I do that?
That's a good question. I think if you, hang on.
I've got 1 participant can share at a time.
Yeah, so let her.
Share screen. 1 participant can share at a time.
You just click on that.
I've done that.
Yeah, it's still saying it's not allowing it.
Who's that? Oh.
I'm trying to remember, it's a while since I've used Zoom, but I think this should
The host has to go to the top.
1 participant.
I think there's something about allowing control should be somewhere.
That one.
Do you want to come here and tell him?
1 participant can share at a time.
Someone is coming here who thinks they might be able to help. Hang on.
Brilliant.
We're not the host. We're not the host.
Who's the host? Aubrey, if you could go to the original settings where you kind of came into the Zoom meeting.
Yes.
And I think that enable screen sharing, you do it from that point, although I'm not entirely sure.
Didn't seem to work. Share screen. It is greened up.
She said that.
Or it's down at the bottom on screen sharing. But I think you found that.
Yes, it's lit up as green, and the option is one participant can share at a time.
Okay, so then Rachel, if you've
got the document up.
Rachel, can you, if you have the document up, apparently.
It's still saying that the host has disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, so you feel okay to carry on without the presentation, just to talk through it?
Okay, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, I think that's probably best if we, otherwise, yeah,
that's fine. Okay, so so I've been asked to come along today to
sorry, Aubrey, can you just put everybody on mute so we don't get feedback until the end when we can ask questions at the end?
If I mute everybody, that will mute the speaker.
Then she can unmute herself.
I can unmute myself then.
Yeah, if you mute everyone.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Yes, good. Brilliant. So I've been asked to come along today to talk to you about speech and swallowing difficulties associated with Parkinson's. In my talk today, I'm sort of hoping to cover a few different areas. I want to kind of look at identifying potential difficulties that you may experience, hopefully provide you with some advice and some useful tips that you can use if you are experiencing any of these difficulties. And also I want to try to help improve your understanding of why the difficulties might be happening, and also give you some information about how you can contact us should you need further support in now or in the future. So how a speech and language therapist might be able to help you, there's basically three areas that we cover in relation to Parkinson's. The first one being communication. So when we talk about communication, we're basically talking about speech, so the words that we say, or voice, the way that we say them. The second area is swallowing. So you may experience difficulties or challenges with eating or drinking. And thirdly, managing saliva. Might be too much saliva or not enough saliva. I think it's important to say, though, that not everybody with Parkinson's will experience all of these difficulties or may not experience any of these difficulties, but I'm just going to talk about sort of the range of things that you may possibly experience. I think the other thing to say is that often an individual with Parkinson's may say that they don't have any of these problems, whereas family members or friends may disagree and may kind of be aware of some of these problems, and we'll talk a bit more about why that is. So if we look first at communication, so speech and the voice. So Parkinson's can affect speech in a number of different ways. Often with Parkinson's, you may develop something called hypokinetic dysarthria, which is a bit of a mouthful. Basically, dysarthria is a speech difficulty associated with weakness of the muscles for speech or poor coordination of the speech mechanism. And hypokinetic means reduction of movement. So it's basically reduced movement of the muscles used for speech. And this can present in a number of different ways. You may find that your voice has become quieter. That's quite a common a common problem that we see as speech therapists. You may find that your voice has become more slurred, or that your articulation isn't quite as clear or precise as it was previously. Your speech may become more rushed or more hesitant or disfluent. So you might, sometimes people develop a bit of a stammer or a stutter. Your voice might become more monotone. You may develop a more of a kind of soft, breathy, hoarse voice quality as well. And to have hypokinetic dysarthria, you don't have to have all of those difficulties. It may be that you only have one or a couple of them. So why do these changes come about? What causes the changes to speech? So historically, it was thought that this was due to the rigidity of muscles. So if you think for speech and for the voice, for speech, we're using the muscles of the jaw to formulate the words that we say. For the voice, we're using the muscles down here, the muscles of the larynx, the voice box, to produce voice. So it was thought that if those muscles became rigid, that they're not working as well. It was also linked with the motor dysfunctions of Parkinson's and dopamine deficiency. Now, with dopamine replacement therapies like levodopa, generally they're have been found to have a positive impact on things like slowness of movement, rigidity, and tremors. Sorry, completely went from my head then. However, the effect on speech is more varied, so generally they're less helpful. So this sort of led researchers to think there's more going on, there's something else going on. So more recently, research has focused more on sensory Parkinson's, and it's thought that communication problems may be caused by reduced sensory feedback, reduced biofeedback, and damage to the auditory feedback loop. So so what this means is that it's hard for an individual with Parkinson's, it's hard for you to self-monitor your speech in the moment. It's hard, that ability to internally cue your speech can be impaired. So that means, for example, if you develop a quiet voice, it might be that you're not receiving accurate information about how much effort you're using to speak and how loud you're speaking. So in the moment, that's hard to monitor. So what that means is often a person with Parkinson's will say, my speech is fine, my voice is at the right level, whereas a loved one might say, I can't hear you. And then this often ends up in a discussion or an argument around whether it's one person's hearing that's affected or the other person's speech or voice. What actually can work quite well in sort of settling this argument, if it comes about, is if you record yourself having a conversation and then listen back to it and think about how your volume sounds. If you, in the moment, in a conversation, you might think the level of my voice is absolutely fine. When you listen back to that conversation, that you've recorded, you're likely to notice that your volume is reduced. And yeah, that's to do with this internal cueing, this ability to monitor your speech. So I did have a diagram that I was going to show you next, but as I'm not, I'm going to just explain it a little bit. If you think about when we're talking, thinking about sort of volume levels from very soft, really quiet voice, kind of going up all the way to sort of a loud voice and a shouting voice. Often an individual with Parkinson's is speaking somewhere between very soft and soft, whereas someone without Parkinson's is likely to be speaking sort of at a level higher than that, of what we'd call normal loudness. So this means that an individual with Parkinson's is more likely to need to use more effort to raise their voice up to that normal loudness level. The other thing to say is that sometimes if somebody says to you, oh, you're talking quietly, can you talk a bit louder? You try and talk louder. Sometimes you might feel like you're shouting. You're probably not, but again, it's just to do with that ability to monitor your loudness level. So if we have a look in more detail at the different areas that I mentioned that can be affected by communication and thinking about what we can do about them. I think, just to say at this point, actually, I have, Rose, hopefully you received them. I did send you some leaflets. Yes, brilliant. And I'm going to send them to Rose by email as well, so that she can provide them digitally. So a lot of what I'm talking about today is included in the leaflet. So just because I might be bombarding you with tips and things, a lot of them are written on the leaflet that Rose will be able to hand around to everyone in the hall today, and that will be available for everybody else. So thinking first of all about the quiet voice. Your voice may have become quieter. You might think it's loud enough, but other people are telling you they can't hear you. So what you can do about this, number of things. Firstly, think loud. This is something that we talk about in therapy a lot, that don't just rely on your brain to tell you how loud you're speaking. You need to be thinking loud, and thinking loud works better than someone telling you just to talk loud, because like I said, if someone just says talk loud, you try and talk louder and you feel like you're shouting. If you can think loud, that tends to be more effective in helping you to use a louder voice. Also, using feedback from friends and family, getting friends and family to tell you how your voice sounds, whether it sounds quiet, also to reassure you when you talk louder that you're not shouting, just to help you to kind of be able to figure out what sort of level you should be speaking at. And also that prompting, reminding you to think loud. I mentioned that internal cueing can be impaired in Parkinson's, but research shows that people with Parkinson's respond very well to external cueing. So other people prompting and reminding them to think loud. And the emphasis is on prompting, not nagging. Also, things like reminders can be really helpful in the form of something like post-it notes around the house. So sometimes people might find it helpful to put post-it notes on the phone to remind them to think loud, or by the front door, so that when you answer the door to someone, remind you to use your loud voice, that sort of thing. Also considering your environment. So thinking about things like background noise. If you're trying to have a conversation with the TV on in the background, it's very hard obviously, to hear. So trying to reduce background noise. Also making sure that you're facing the person that you're talking to, so that things like non-verbal cues can be seen by both sides, things like facial expressions, lip reading, gestures, things like that can help in the conversation. And also thinking about things like times of the day when your voice is maybe stronger than other times. Often this can be linked with fatigue, with medication. So trying to kind of plan things like, you know, long conversations or phone conversations. Don't try and do those when you know you're going to be tired and it's harder work. Try and, you know, try and do it when you've taken your medication and you're feeling more, you've got more energy, able to put more effort into it. Things like amplifiers can be really helpful as well. Yeah, sometimes people find they don't need to use an amplifier all the time, but in certain situations they can find that quite helpful. Things like, you know, if you've got a big family gathering or something and you want to make sure that everybody can hear you, sometimes it just takes the pressure off a little bit. And then finally, also loudness training. You may or may not be familiar with LSVT training. I'm going to talk a little bit about that for anyone who's not familiar with it. So LSVT volume training is, LSVT stands for Lee Silverman Voice Therapy, and it's an evidence-based therapy program that was introduced back in 1988 in America. And as I said, it's volume training. It's about increasing your awareness of how much effort is needed for speech. And the main aims of the therapy are to increase vocal loudness and also to improve respiratory support to be able to project your voice more easily. With the therapy program, there are some added bonuses that have been sort of, discovered, which are things like improvements to articulation, facial expression, and also swallowing. But we don't really know why this is. It's just sort of things that have come out of the training, but we don't really understand or know why that is. Now, LSVT is a very intensive therapy program. It's, as a trust, we're not commissioned to provide it because of the intensity of it, but we do use a lot of the LSVT principles in our therapy. So coming on to the second thing that I mentioned in possible communication difficulties, this is around the speed of speech. So you may find that your speech the rate of your speech has increased, or you might find that words are blending into each other, that your speech is becoming more slurred, or that you're starting to stammer. And as a result, it's not quite as easy for people to understand what you're saying. So what can you do about this? Again, think loud, think big. Those are two things that we talk about a lot. So we talked about how the hypokinetic dysarthria is about reduction in movement. So thinking loud and thinking big just helps you to really articulate your speech more, and can help you to slow down. Also, it sounds really simple, but just taking your time and breathing. When you're talking, if you are talking with a fast rate of speech, just thinking about breathing if you stop, pause, take a breath, you are going to slow yourself down, slow that rate down. Also, thinking about over-articulating, and this is particularly important for longer words, words with several syllables, really articulating each syllable in the word will help to improve your clarity of speech, but also, again, will help you to slow down. Now, both of these things, breathing and over-articulating, I often talk to people about reading, you know, if you enjoy reading a paragraph of a book out loud and practicing those techniques of over-articulating the words and taking your time, phrasing your speech. That's quite a good way of practicing this outside of a normal conversation, because often in the moment in the conversation, it's hard to think of, oh, I need to breathe and I need to articulate well and those sorts of things. Also, if someone asks you to repeat something, they haven't understood what you've said, then thinking about articulating each syllable in the word or articulating the sentence. Also, again, getting friends and family to help and getting them to model exaggerated articulation. We tend to mirror the way that the person that we're talking to is talking. So if other people can do that to help us, then, you know, we will hopefully start to mirror that as well. In the same way, not just exaggerated speech, but also rate of speech. If I really slow down and talk slowly, you're more likely to talk more slowly. Whereas if I'm rushing, you're going to rush. And then there's also some other things that we use in therapy, such as something called pacing boards or tapping, where you tap each syllable as you say it, which again, to begin with, is quite difficult to do, but that can really slow that rate of speech down. And then another thing that I mentioned, another area of difficulty is flat speech or monotone speech. You might find that your speech is becoming more flat sounding, that you've got reduced facial expression or reduced gesture. And again, with this, we look at thinking loud and thinking big, exaggerating. So exaggerating that facial expression, exaggerating tone and gesture and things like that. So when it comes to putting that into practice, it's two main things I would say. One is external reminders. So whether that is, like I said, post-it notes around the house reminding you to do things, or enlisting friends and family to help support you and prompt you. And also finding the strategies that work for you and that make the biggest difference and focusing on those. Okay, so moving on to swallowing. When we think about the normal swallow, what should happen is that we go to eat something, we bite it, we chew it in our mouth and form it into what we call a bolus, which we then can swallow, and we swallow that in a timely way. But when things go wrong, you might find with Parkinson's, the common things that we see are reduced chewing, or chewing becomes more difficult. You might start coughing when you're eating or drinking, or choking or feeling like you're choking. You could develop a chest infection or lose weight. And also you may find less enjoyment in eating or drinking. Also, sometimes people start to find it difficult to use cutlery. So just thinking about what happens when we swallow, I did have a diagram to show you here, but I will try and explain it clearly without the diagram. So if you think when we eat or drink something, we put it in our mouth, we use our teeth to chew it and our tongue to move the food or drink around in our mouth and to the back of our mouth. We then start to swallow. When we swallow, we have two tubes, kind of one behind the other. The one at the front is the airway, which goes down to the lungs, and behind that we have the esophagus going down to the stomach. What should happen is that when we swallow, at the top of the windpipe, we have a flap, that the epiglottis, which should fold over the windpipe to stop any food or drink going down the windpipe. And that then, the food or drink is then directed behind it down the esophagus towards the stomach. So that's what should happen. However, sometimes that epiglottis may not close or not close quick enough, or food and drink might get left sort of behind and then can trickle down into the, down the windpipe into the, towards the lungs. In Parkinson's, often we find that people have, as I mentioned, difficulty chewing food, sorry, or there might be a feeling that food is sticking in the throat, that you can't quite push it down. Also, you might find that you're losing fluid at the front of the mouth, which can be down to a reduced lip seal, so more difficult to keep your mouth closed when you've got fluid in your mouth. You might have too much saliva getting in the way when you're eating and drinking, or there might be a weakness in the throat that causes the food to stick or causes you to cough or choke. So kind of signs to look out for are if you're feeling like you need to avoid certain foods, or if you notice that you're coughing when you're eating or drinking, or if you start to lose weight. Also, a wet sounding voice after eating or drinking could be a sign that food's going down the wrong way, or if you start to develop a chest infection. So just thinking about what you can do to help if these things, any of these things are happening. The first thing would be to have an assessment by speech therapy. We would see you and watch you eating and drinking and see what's going on, see if we can see what's happening. And then we would make advice and recommendations around that. Sometimes it's a case of looking at posture. Are you sitting upright when you're eating and drinking? If you're not, then often the airway can open up more and food or drink can go down the wrong way. Sometimes looking at modifying the diet. So with different textures, we might say to try softer foods, or sometimes having drinks with some thickener in, which slows down the flow of the drink, meaning it's easier to swallow and less likely to go down the wrong way. There are things like special cups that you can use that mean that you don't have to tilt your head back so far so the airway doesn't open up so much. Or things like taking small mouthfuls, single sips of a drink rather than guzzling down a whole glass of something. And also chewing carefully and chewing slowly. You might also find that the time of day makes a difference. Again, as I mentioned before, you know, fatigue, time of medication, that sort of thing can have an impact on your ability to swallow food and drink. And also just to mention about medication, that's often a tricky one, that people find it difficult to swallow tablets with water. Now, it's a common problem because a tablet and water are kind of opposite ends of the spectrum when we think of food and drink along a spectrum. So trying to swallow the two at the same time can be challenging. There are a few different things that you can do. One is you can request from the GP to have some medication is available in sort of syrup or liquid form. or it may be that taking medication with yogurt rather than a drink is easier, and or having the medication crushed. Yeah, the only thing I would say with that is check with your GP and on the medication before you adapt your medication. So yeah, finally coming to managing saliva. You may have a problem of too little saliva, that your mouth feels really dry or your throat feels dry. And this is usually due to medication. Your Parkinson's medication can often cause dryness. So things that you can do to help with this are drinking plenty of water, ideally drinking 1 to 2 litres of water a day. Try not to have too much caffeine, because that can be quite drying. Something like steam inhalation is quite effective at keeping the throat and the mouth quite moist. And also using lip balm, keeping the mouth moist will help as well. Alternatively, you may find that you've got too much saliva. The reason for this is sometimes it's due to forgetting to swallow, or it could be to do with poor posture. If you're leaning forwards, obviously gravity is sending the liquid forwards, and if there's a lot of saliva in your mouth, it needs to go somewhere. So often that causes people to dribble. And also it may be that if you've got poor lip seal, as I said, if it's difficult for you to keep your lips together, and also that often combined with posture can cause you to dribble. So what you can do about this is there is medication available to help with too much saliva. There are some exercises that you can do to help with improving your lip seal, which a speech therapist could discuss with you. And there are also some more kind of natural things that you can try, like dark grape juice and sage capsules, not together, either or, are good for thinning saliva. Good for if you have thin saliva. And apple juice or pineapple juice are good if you have thick saliva. They break down the enzymes in thick saliva. So it's just a few things that you could try. So yeah, what you can do now is try using some of these self-management strategies, which hopefully you will be able to look at on the leaflet that I've provided and that I will provide. And if you need further support, if you have a swallowing difficulty, you need to speak to your GP in the first instance and ask them to refer to speech therapy, and then we would see you for a swallow assessment and would make recommendations then. If you have a communication difficulty and you would like some support, then you can either go to your GP and ask for a referral to speech therapy, or you can come directly to us and self-refer to us. Our contact details are on the leaflet that I've provided, so you should have all the information that you need on there. Yeah, and that's it. So I don't know if there are any questions.
That's
probably
brilliant.
weren't able to see my lovely presentation, but
Yeah, no, and I'm sorry that we couldn't enable that, but that's one of our teething difficulties. We'll get it better for next time.
That's fine.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Rachel. That's very interesting and informative. And I think now the best way to do this, if we, I'll just get this on gallery view here so we can see everybody.
I don't know, sorry, I'm just going to say, I don't know if it would help, but I can always provide the slides.
Yeah, that would be lovely. Yeah.
Have a look at it, because I know it's quite hard when you can't see things, just to be sort of given lots.
No, exactly. No, but it was
hard to remember.
It was great. Now, David, why can't I get this on gallery view properly here? I have no idea. Anyway,
Does Aubrey
oh,
need
here,
to do
hang
it,
on,
maybe?
gallery. That's it. It's all right, done it. So I think the best way to do it is, Aubrey, if you could unmute people, and then we can take any questions online first of all, and then we come to the hall and see if anybody's got any here. So,
I don't know that I can unmute people.
okay, fine. But if they'd like to ask a question, you can unmute yourself and ask it. Anybody online first of all? All quiet. I've got a question to kick off. I wanted to ask you about what you thought of the benefits of singing, because we do have a singing group in the branch, which David Stanfield can tell us a little bit more about. But Rachel, if you could tell just interested what your thoughts are on the benefits of singing.
Yeah, I think singing is a great thing to do with Parkinson's, because obviously when you sing, well, I think the first thing to say is that with singing, you have to think about your breathing, and that's, you know, important. I mentioned with the LSVT training that they kind of look at respiratory support, and having good respiratory support, good breath support for speech and for singing is really important, because it helps you to be able to project your voice more. And that's something I didn't kind of go into that very much, but that's something that we would often look at in speech therapy as well. Also with singing, I think it's that, well, I think, yeah, if you're singing, particularly in a group, you're kind of performing, whether that's, you know, on a stage performing or just within your group. But I think that really helps with the whole kind of think loud concept of sort of, it helps you to project your voice more, to think loud and to be loud. So yeah, I think Parkinson's singing groups are a really good idea.
Excellent. In which case, David, could you do a bit of an advert for the group that you run it, right? Unmute yourself. That's it.
Yes, we have a class we call Find Your Voice, which meets twice a month on a Friday morning for an hour. We have a singing instructor who is a professional opera singer and is a choir master and a singing teacher. He's very versatile, and he starts it off with warming up exercises, which has to do with getting your posture correct and your breathing. It gives different breathing techniques, and we do some voice projection work, and then we get into the singing songs together. And he gets us to sing songs, they're all sort of familiar or popular songs or music hall songs, and these we try to put into practice what we've been taught about in the warm-up, the projection of the voice, and also listening to other people singing and coordinating your voice with their voices. So it's quite an exercise for the body and the voice and the brain as well. You're having to focus on with the singing and listening to somebody else sing. It's definitely a good exercise for the brain to take your input and coordinate your output with your input.
Excellent. And that group is back in meeting again now, is it? In person?
It's meeting on the 2nd and 4th Fridays of the month at Greenwood Park, Chiswell Green.
Yeah, brilliant. And the details are on the website. What time? What time I've been asked?
From 11 till 12.
11 till 12. Yeah.
Can I ask, what was the group called again?
Find Your Voice.
Find Your Voice.
Is there a waiting list? I've been asked.
Well, we have probably got a capacity of 16, I think, would be the capacity, and we've had up to 12 people there.
So hurry. It's
We
a
could call it-
Chiswell Green. Greenwood Park, sorry, Greenwood Park. Yes, but if you the details are on the website, so you can contact David if you want to go along. That's the best thing. But I guess if there was lots of demand, David, we might even put on another group.
Well, we could squeeze more people into the group.
Yeah, I think. Hang on a minute. Hang on, I've got a question here. Huh? Oh. No, well, they should be able to go. Oh, no, I suppose just capacity. So if the carer or wife wanted to come, or husband wanted to come too, is that okay? Does that?
Oh, many people come as couples.
Yeah.
The person with Parkinson's and the friend or family member.
Yeah, great.
So it's usually about 50-50 between people with Parkinson's and the carers or partners.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just think if there was demand for more, then we might be able to do another one as well. But maybe I'm looking out to. Any questions from anyone else in the hall? Would anybody like to ask? Yes, John. Yeah. 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 Oh, it's strange, your voice. So what he's saying is he was told by a speech therapist basically what the basic advice was speak louder. So he tries to do that, but it strains his voice. So he wants to know if there's anything you can do about that.
Yeah, so that's looking then at more at breath support, because if you're raising your voice more than kind of a natural level, it's like if we try and shout. If you keep shouting, you're going to strain your voice. What I was saying about, often people with Parkinson's are speaking at that sort of softer volume, and you want to get it up to a kind of normal loudness. So it should be within your ability to raise your voice, but not raising it too high that you are straining it. So that would be looking at breath support and trying to work on using some breathing techniques to try and improve that breath support, so that you can project your voice more, because you've got more air kind of pushing up to create voice. And also, again, using that feedback from other people around you to know what is a normal level. Is it that you're now talking in a shout, or is your voice, in which case you would be straining your voice quite a lot, or are you talking at a level that is normal? It's, again, because it's hard to kind of monitor that yourself in real time, or actually doing, I mentioned about recording your voice. You could do that regularly and listen to it to just help you to kind of understand, okay, right, in that conversation, I was actually talking too loud, and that's why my voice felt quite strained. And in this conversation, I was talking really softly, and actually it's quite hard to hear myself. Does that kind of help?
Yes, it does, he says. Another one, hang on. Yeah. Ah. Somebody else is saying here that if they have ice cream, then it helps.
Ice cream always helps.
What does it help with? The voice, or?
He helps it well, just like he said, it warms the, ironically, it warms the voice up. Okay. And somebody else said chocolate.
Probably just helps you feel good about it. You feel more relaxed and able to, I don't know, I'm not sure there's any kind of scientific reason for that.
Aubrey's got his finger up.
Yeah, Aubrey has a question, I think.
Aubrey, go on.
Many years ago, I used to be a chorister in the cathedral. I was not allowed to cheer on the side of the football pitch or the rugby pitch.
Yeah, because of the chance of straining the voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yes, Dawn. Yeah, somebody's asking, why would ice cream help? Because John says it helps warm his voice up, helps him sing.
Well,
yeah. Someone else is trying to understand why that would be.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there is any kind of scientific evidence that it, you know, but I mean, I can only think that in the same way that, you know, drinking water, it helps to kind of, it moistens the throat, and, you know.
But ice cream tastes better.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, is there anything to do with cold? Yeah, so Dawn is asking, is there anything specifically about hot or cold that would be relevant to helping?
Not really, only in that, I mean, often, to be honest, cold things are more likely to irritate the throat, more likely to make you cough or something. So I would think, I mean, you know, warmer drinks are quite soothing for the throat. Yeah, I'm not really sure with the ice cream, to be honest, why.
Well, it helps him, so.
Yeah, if it works, then why not?
Yeah. Any other questions in the hall, anybody? No, I think we're good. Anybody else online got any questions? No, I think we're good. Well, that's really, really excellent. Thank you, Rachel. It was a very interesting talk, and we look forward to receiving your leaflet, and which we'll put on our website. And also, the talk has been recorded, so we'll put that off. That goes actually on the link on the website, which takes you to a YouTube version of it. So yeah, that's it. Well, thank you very much, and we'll log off now from here. Good to see everybody. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right.